Welcome to the Daily Insider right here on VegasInsider.com. Kevin Rogers with you as we have reached Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. And we are in the middle of between weeks 1 and week 2 in the NFL. And a lot to go over from, or at least looking ahead to week 2, which we're looking forward to. And we bring on Matt Blunt, who joins us every Wednesday here on the Daily Insider. And Matt, obviously, a lot to go over from week 1, and we'll look ahead to week 2 in just a moment. But what was your takeaway from all the underdogs and their success in week 1?
In terms of the underdogs, I can't say I'm too surprised. I mean, everyone's working off last year's numbers for the most part. So the spreads aren't necessarily going to be as accurate as they will come week 6, week 8, week 10, whatever. So taking the underdogs early in the year the underdogs hitting early in the year doesn't surprise me at all.
And, we saw it ended with the Raiders on Monday night coming back to beat the Ravens. So now we'll see how things turn out going into week 2. In your hot not piece that we have on VegasInsider.com, there are 2 really interesting systems that you pulled up for this week. And the first one, fading NFL teams that scored 30 or more points and lost straight up in week 1. Since 2012, if you go against those teams in week 2, you're 7-1 straight up, 8-0 ATS. Now, there's one team in that spot, and that's fading the Detroit Lions, who had that big comeback against San Francisco. They lost on Sunday. Now they go to Green Bay. So you feel good about laying the points with the Packers according to the system, Matt?
I feel plenty comfortable laying the points with the Packers. I mean, Detroit, I don't think you're going to need too many reasons to go against them in general this year. I mean, from the coaching selection to the QB trade and everything else that's going on with the Lions organization, that's gone on for years. To see them actually be the only ones to fit this was surprising because I had done it before the week even started. So I thought there would actually be a couple more. And even, I mean, New Orleans, like I said, New Orleans seems to always find a way in there. And it was easily, or no, it wasn't easily, but you could have guessed that the loser of the New Orleans-Green Bay game would fit it as well. But with Detroit being on the negative side of this thing and Green Bay being the team that just looked absolutely awful and was getting just beat down by every which way in media and articles and everything this week, like, it's almost a perfect storm for me. So it sucks that it's on Monday night because I know Monday night favorites are – I don't like to necessarily be on Monday night favorites all the time, but other than that, I'll live with it this week.
Yeah, because you have – the expectation is in this game, Matt, that Green Bay is going to bounce back. Aaron Rodgers was terrible against New Orleans. It was a neutral site game, and they'll just rebound because they're back at Lambeau. And I just remember even 2 years ago that game at Lambeau where the Lions had the opportunity to win, and people were talking about questionable officiating. The Packers won by 1. Last year, the Packers blew them out at Lambeau. But, it's going to go into that Monday night where it's that chase game. It feels like Green Bay and survivor pools and everything.
Yeah.
They're going to blow out Detroit. But, the Lions, the other thing you can look at too, Matt, is that the Lions were getting destroyed by the 49ers in that game, that they were getting run, and then they make that comeback. So, again, there's a lot of things going to play in this game.
Well, exactly. Like, I'm not even sure you can theoretically count them as a strong part of this system simply because they greaseballed their way into 30 points with those 2 scores in the final 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it was. So, and yes, there's the whole thing. Green Bay is going to bounce back. It's the Lions. Like, they're the doormat for the Packers. They run all over them. So that is a worry. But I mean, if I'm always going to be worried against stuff like that, like, I don't know why you're betting if you're scared to lose. So.
Yeah, and we'll see how that goes with Green Bay going to week 2, trying to rebound after a really bad loss to the Saints. Now, as far as your who's not, and this is a really good one from last year, and it's already hit twice so far through week 1. Backing teams before playing a Thursday night game. All right. 7-15 straight up, 7-14-1 against the spread last season, and 2-12 straight up, and 3-10-1 against the spread through week 9 of 2020. already 0-2 straight up against the spread. It was Washington losing at home to the Chargers and the Giants getting destroyed by the Broncos. So that would mean this week it's Houston and Carolina because they play next Thursday.
Mm-hmm. I actually was kicking myself for not remembering this before I played Washington last week, but it is something like, again, I tried to explain in the article. It's one of those things where I think maybe guys are just, their routines are totally thrown off early in the year, and I think that's probably why it works better earlier in the year than later. They're more comfortable. They're in football shape, whatever that means. But I think early in the year, guys are. I mean, I don't know how much the teams plan, or the Giants and Washington plan for each other last week, but I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if they at least did something. And then they've got, I mean, they both could get really nothing going on offense. I mean, not that they're offensive juggernauts, but I think the idea early in the year, guys are looking to establish a routine, like play Sunday, day off Monday, whatever, and then practice the rest of the week, whatever their actual routine is. And these Thursday night games throw a huge wrinkle into that. And I just think they're still trying to figure out themselves as a team, and then also just how to game plan and how to manage their time. And that's probably why I would trust it more now, maybe until like Halloween or something like that, and then maybe look to not rely on it so heavily. But it's one of those things where I don't know why necessarily it works, but it just seems to work almost every year.
And the two teams this week, Matt, so it'd be Carolina and Houston, who you would fade in this system because they're on Thursday night next week. Carolina hosts New Orleans, and the Panthers just beat the Jets last week. So the Panthers now flip from a favorite to a dog. They remain home. And Houston, who beat Jacksonville, they go to Cleveland, and the Browns are off of a loss to Kansas City. So you do feel good about the situations too, with these teams, that Houston beat a bad Jacksonville team and Carolina beat a not so great Jets team. Do you still feel good about those games within the system?
Well, Cleveland, it's a lot of points. So Houston, I don't know. I think Urban Meyer just looked completely overwhelmed, and I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled a Nick Saban and quit halfway through the year. But so I'm not, and that's a lot of points to Cleveland off a huge letdown loss. So I'm not totally confident in that part of it. But taking the Saints, I wish they actually didn't look as good as they did, but I am plenty comfortable taking the Saints over Carolina.
Yeah, and the Saints, we'll see how they respond. It'll be really interesting after this big win over Green Bay, and now they're truly on the road in Louisiana, with the hurricane, and they had another tropical storm that came in there. So there's a lot of issues there. They haven't even been home yet. Now, getting off the hot knot, Matt, considering the underdogs did so well last week, which favorites are you keeping an eye on this week? Some that you really like, thinking the favorites will bounce back, or you get under the impression, the underdogs are going to remain hot?
Well, I have teams. I have to pull up the lines here to see who's actually favorites and dogs, but I have teams already outlined. So favorite, I guess, would be Seattle. I really love Seattle this week. Home field, back with the fans. Tennessee's defense just continued as is and was as garbage as is. So, and I did write earlier in the year that Russell Wilson is one of my MVP plays. So I think that Seattle can just continue to build on what they did on the road against the AFC South team last year, do it at home against another AFC South team, or last week, sorry, and do it again this week. New Orleans would be a favorite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I already talked about them. And then Denver. Denver is another team, like I just said. I mean, it's a bit -6 is a little high, but like I said, Urban Meyer looks over like he's in over his head.
Yeah, and again, it's the overreaction going into this week of what we saw from week one. I want to get one final thought from you about the Sunday night game. Any thoughts there with the Chiefs and the Ravens? Baltimore blowing that lead up to 14-0 on the Raiders, and then they were up late, and the Raiders came back, tied it, and then eventually won in overtime. We know that Lamar Jackson's had problems with the Chiefs the last few years, but the Chiefs now a short favorite against the Ravens. Any thoughts on that Sunday night game?
I would prefer the Ravens if Lamar didn't show me he still has fumbling issues. That's the big concern there. I was on Baltimore on Monday night, money line, and just money line with my money line parlay with Tampa. But it Ravens didn't necessarily. They're not going to be able to keep up if in a game against the 30s with KC, just because they prefer to run the ball. I mean, they had 30s in Oakland game or in the Vegas game, but I would prefer the Ravens because I think their defense can at least hold them in. But if they keep turning the ball over, they've got no shot.
Yeah, and you don't normally get Baltimore in an underdog role necessarily at
Yeah.
home. So that'll be interesting. And considering the Chiefs were down last week, they came back and beat the Browns. Very interesting matchup with those two teams in prime time.
That'll be another thing. It's because it's prime time. It's similar to the Green Bay. Like Kansas City's probably going to get all the love. Baltimore probably cost a lot of people a lot of different tickets in a variety of ways this week. So they'll have no problem going against them this week. And with the Chiefs, obviously. But the Chiefs also continue to they just don't cover spreads. They haven't since their Super Bowl win. So I'm more interested in just staying on the sidelines there. We'll see what happens.
Matt Blunt, you can check out his work at VegasInsider.com, the Hot and Not Report. Also, he'll have Total Talk later in the week, looking ahead to week 2 in the NFL from a totals perspective. Matt, thank you so much. We'll talk again next week.
All right, thank you.
All right, there is Matt Blunt there. And, some interesting things. The Thursday night, the pre-Thursday night system is really interesting. How we saw last year, 7-15 straight up, 7-14-1 against the spread to fade teams before they play a Thursday night game. And it hit with both these teams last week with the Giants and Washington. And now Carolina and Denver are up next. Now, Carolina-Houston, excuse me. I said Carolina-Denver. Carolina-Houston, excuse me. I don't mind Carolina at home as a dog against New Orleans. I just wonder if the Saints are going to kind of fall after they had this huge win against Green Bay last week that I'm not going to say it was a Super Bowl type game, but it was a revenge game from last year. The Packers went to the Superdome and beat the Saints. And New Orleans, after everything they went through with the hurricane, that was their big game. Now you're playing Carolina. Granted, and I know it's a divisional game that they're going to be fired up for, but Sam Darnold showed some signs of life last week against the Jets, and understandably the Saints are much better than the Jets, but the Saints could be or the Panthers could be a look there against the Saints. The Texans and the Browns, I don't know if I have a lot of faith taking the points with Houston in that one, but in Matt's system, you would take Cleveland to fade the Texans. Houston has got some confidence. Cleveland, they blew that game against Kansas City last week. And I'm never a huge proponent of backing teams as double-digit favorites off a loss because the expectation is they're just going to go in and they're going to roll Houston. Well, maybe Houston's not as bad as we thought. I'm not saying Houston's a playoff team, but maybe the Texans aren't as bad as we anticipated. So they could probably hang with Cleveland. Now look at the rest of the NFL coming up on Sunday. The interesting matchups, that Bengals-Bears game is down to 2. That one opened at 3.5. It's now down to 2 at several spots, 2.5 even in the old Andy Dalton revenge game. So people jumping on the Bengals there. The Raiders and the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Steelers a 5.5-point favorite. They were a dog last week in the game at Buffalo, and now they're flipped to a favorite against the Raiders, coming off the big win over the Ravens. The Bills laying 3.5 against the Dolphins, and now Buffalo off of the blown lead against Pittsburgh last week. So they go down south. They beat the Dolphins twice last year, and Miami off of the 1-point victory over New England on the road, a game that New England had a chance to take the lead late and they fumbled. This one to me is really interesting too, is this Rams-Colts game in Indianapolis. We saw how bad the Colts were last week as a home dog. They're a home dog again. They just faced Seattle, now they're facing LA. And the Rams rolled the Bears at home. Now they go on the road to play Indy. I still got to look at that one a little bit, but I don't know if Indy's worth a look. I took them last week against Minnesota, and they or Indianapolis against Seattle. I had Indianapolis and Minnesota, but Indianapolis against Seattle last week, and Russell Wilson carved them up. The 49ers laying 3.5 at Philadelphia. So the 49ers back out east again, or Eastern time zone. They were in Detroit last week. So San Francisco laying 3.5 at Philadelphia. And now we'll see what Jalen Hurts does in his second start of the season. Played very well against an Atlanta team that, again, is kind of a mess right now. But the 49ers, they put up all those points on the Lions. San Francisco, when healthy, was still a pretty good team. I think we forgot how good they were. They have some injuries now, but we forgot how good they were last year because of all the injuries they had, and they just couldn't compete. The Broncos and the Jags, I'll tell you, I think Jacksonville could be worth a look here. I really do. That everyone's really down on Urban Meyer for what happened last week, and people are talking. Urban Meyer came out today after Clay Helton was fired at USC. Urban said, I'm not interested in the USC job. I don't think he's leaving the Jags to take the USC job now. I just don't think that makes any sense at all. But Denver's laying 6 now. That just seems like a lot. After they beat the Giants, now they're going back out east again. And Jacksonville, who was a road favorite at Houston last week, which was kind of silly, now they're getting nearly a touchdown at home. I mean, Jacksonville could be worth a look. Now, again, Trevor Lawrence going against a very good Denver defense, but that seems like a bit of an overreaction there. Patriots laying 5.5, 6 against the Jets. And the Patriots off a loss last week to Miami. And the Jets, I mean, Zach Wilson, he's got a long way to go. We know Belichick's been good against against rookie quarterbacks in his career. This one, to me, is also very interesting. Minnesota at Arizona. And the Cardinals laying 4 after they just beat up the Titans last week. Minnesota, who did not look great at all against Cincinnati, but still had a chance to win in overtime. They came back from 14 down. They tied it. They went to OT. They stopped the Bengals on the first possession of overtime. Vikings got into Cincinnati territory. Dalvin Cook fumbled at about the 40 or so they still had a ways to go to get a field goal. But the Vikings weren't great in that game. They're now 0-8 against the spread, their last 8, dating back to last year. But now you're getting 4, so the roles have flipped. Vikings go from a road favorite to a road dog. Arizona goes from a road dog to a home favorite. And the expectation probably is Arizona would beat them. But Minnesota, I'm not ready to give up on them just yet. Now this one too, Atlanta's at Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay laying 12.5, 13 against Atlanta. And Atlanta was horrible last week. But again, Atlanta laying 3.5 to Philadelphia. Now you're getting nearly 2 touchdowns. And Tampa Bay survived past Dallas on the last second field goal. That seems like a lot of points. Tennessee's at Seattle. And the Seahawks are 5.5-point favorites now. Seattle's got the crowd back. Matt mentioned that. And it's obviously been very big for the Seahawks. That was a problem last year. Just you have a huge home field advantage and you don't have a crowd. That's going to hurt you. Tennessee, after getting diced up by Kyler Murray, now face Russell Wilson. That, to me, could be a stay-away game, but that's very intriguing. This one's a tough one, too. Cowboys and Chargers in L.A. Second straight road game for the Cowboys to start after they lost a close game to Tampa Bay. Now they face Justin Herbert for the first time, and the Chargers laying 3. The Chargers escaped that game against Washington last week. They played a very good defensive team in Washington, and I played a not-so-good defensive team in Dallas. And the Chargers closed as a short dog against Washington last week, which I really didn't understand. I was in the Chargers. One of my 2 good calls last week, the Chargers and Cardinals. Those were my only 2 good calls. I had a bunch of bad calls. But Chargers a short favorite. Kansas City at Baltimore. Last year, the Ravens were favored against the Chiefs in that Monday night game, and the Chiefs destroyed them at M&T Bank Stadium. Now the Ravens are an underdog to the Chiefs after losing that game on Monday night. Again, they should have won. And the Chiefs probably should have lost to the Browns. But everyone's going to talk about Lamar's struggles against the Chiefs in his 2 appearances against them. But now you're getting Lamar as a home underdog. Kind of interesting. And then the Packers-Lions on Monday night. Not ready to make a pick on that one, but Green Bay laying 11 against this Detroit team who, they looked bad for a while against San Francisco, and somehow they came back and made the game interesting. But Matt brought up that system, 30 points or more in a loss in week 1. You don't fare well in week 2. And that would be the case for the Lions. They're the only team in the league that scored 30 points or more and lost in week 1. So those are the games in week 2. And, of course, we have the Giants and Washington on Thursday night. I want to bring up a few quick little hitters on this one. Then we'll talk some baseball for this evening. So Daniel Jones has struggled a lot. We know that. But for some reason, Daniel Jones has played very well against the Washington football team the last few years. The Giants are 4-0 in Daniel Jones' last 4 appearances against the football team. Also, the Giants 6-1 against the spread their last 7 as a road dog, all coming last year under Joe Judge. So they're a pretty good road dog. They won at Seattle. They had a couple of other close losses. And this number, too, I dug up. Thursday night football, road dogs, week 2. Week 2, road dogs, Thursday night football. Since 2015, I believe it is, because one time you had a road favorite. You had Baltimore at Cincinnati, so we throw that out. Just road underdogs. 4-1 straight up, 5-0 against the spread. So that would be the Giants in this spot. And the only straight-up loser was the Bengals last year in that shootout against the Browns. 35-30 game that Joe Burrow played very well in. But the Bengals covered as a dog. Browns ended up winning that game. But these road dogs outright, I mean, you had the Bucs over the Panthers a few years ago. Broncos over the Chiefs with Peyton Manning. You had the Jets over the Bills. So there's been some pretty good wins by the road dogs in this situation over the last few years. So that would point towards the Giants. Week 2 road dogs on Thursday Night Football have fared very well. So let's take a look now at Major League Baseball. And we got today, the first game out of the gate. Marlins and the Nationals. A dream come true for me. A couple of cousins are playing in this one. As you have the Battle of the Rogers on the mound in D.C. Finally, we have this. Trevor Rogers, Josh Rogers. They are going at it at 105 from Nationals Park, thankfully. Never see this again. We had the Peraltas last night in Detroit. We have the Rogerses today in D.C. And these two teams wrapping up their series. Marlins won the first game 3-0. Nationals bounced back last night 8-2. If Eric Fedde can just face the Marlins all the time, he'd win the Cy Young. Because he's 3-0 against Miami this year, and he has totally shut them down. For whatever reason, Eric Fedde is the Marlins killer. So today, Trevor Rogers goes for the Fish. 7-7 record, 2.73 ERA. And since he returned, or since the All-Star break, Marlins just 1-3 in his last 4 starts. Lost his last start at Atlanta, and he's 0-2 against Washington this year, so he'll try to break through. Josh Rogers, meanwhile, third cousin, 1-0 record, 3.65 ERA. His last start against Pittsburgh, 6 2/3, 2 earned runs, not bad. So he's pitched well. Trevor's been so a couple lefties on the mound, and the Marlins favored in that one today. The Reds and Pirates, last night, we saw Pittsburgh jump out to a 3-0 lead on Cincinnati. They won 6-5. Pittsburgh now 13-4 the last 17 home series openers. Crazy number. And for the Pirates, before we even get to today's matchup, I believe they've almost run out of home games. They have 2 home series left. The Cubs on September 28th and the Reds again October 1st. those would be 2 times you would look to back the Pirates because those are home openers, and they have been exceptional in those. So the Pirates won last night 6-5. Pittsburgh has won 5 of 7, which is kind of unbelievable after they got swept by the Cubs on the road. And the Reds have lost 3 straight. And Cincinnati has totally them and the San Diego Padres just don't want to get in the playoffs for some reason because they are not playing well down the stretch at this moment, because the Dodgers are the top team. So let's not even discuss them. The Cardinals are the number 2 seed, or number 2 team in the wild card in the National League. The Reds are right behind them, a half game. The Padres are 1 back. But the Cardinals, I don't want to say have come out of nowhere, but they were struggling for a bit, and they've jumped the Reds and the Padres. So the Reds, who, oh, by the way, they get the Dodgers this weekend at home. After that, they get Pittsburgh and Washington, so it eases up. But can't be losing these games to the Pirates. It's Vladimir Gutierrez and Mitch Keller on the mound. We've talked about Gutierrez being a very good road pitcher this year, 3.43 ERA, 6-2 record away from Great American Ballpark. And for Gutierrez, though, the only issue is he is winless his last 3 starts. And 2 of those have come on the road. 1 against the Marlins and 1 against the Cubs. But Gutierrez, though, 4-1 to the under his last 5 starts overall. And for Mitch Keller, he did not pitch well against the Tigers last time out. Not really surprised because he was great against the Cubs before that, so he had to take a step back. But Keller gave up 4 earned runs against the Tigers in a 5-1 loss. Last time he faced the Reds, 11-3 loss in early August. Gave up 4 earned runs in 5 innings of work. But I said this yesterday, and I still believe in this. Look for the teams, the bad teams, that still not have something to play for, but are playing well down the stretch. Because we always like to think that, okay, this team is better than this team, so this team has to win. Team A is better than Team B, so Team A has to win. That's not the case necessarily. It really isn't. So you have to see how it turns out with these teams playing well, like the Pirates, like the Royals, that are still caring at the end. The Cubs are one of those teams. And you know what? I'll give the Cubs credit because, yes, they were swept by the Giants this past weekend at home. But looking back at the Cubs, they beat the Phillies last night 6-3. And the Cubs recently, they're 10-5 their last 15 games. For a team that traded away all their heavy hitters, that's not a bad job by David Ross and the Cubs. That they're 10-5 with 3 of the losses coming to the Giants at home, who are the best team in baseball, and another loss to the White Sox and a loss to the Reds. Those are all quality teams. And look, Philadelphia's free falling too. That's a really good win by the Cubs last night, going into Philadelphia and winning. So the Phillies, who have dropped now 6 of 7, classic September for Philadelphia. They go to Ranger Suarez tonight, who actually has been pretty good, even though the Phillies are 1-4 his last 5 starts. He has pitched well. He's got a 1.38 ERA in the season. He's allowed 1 earned run or less in 4 straight starts. And he's not going like 3 innings. He's pitching 5 or 6 innings in a lot of these starts. But he just needs some run support. That's the problem. And on the flip side, Alec Mills, who has gotten a couple big underdog wins this year, did it against the White Sox, 7-0 win, came 2 outs, within 2 outs of a complete game, was plus 270. He won at Colorado a few starts ago. For the most part, he's going to keep you in games, Alec Mills. He beat the Phillies earlier this season when he opposed Zach Wheeler at Wrigley Field. I kind of like Philly in this one, even take him on the run line. I know it's a heavy number, but I think Philly bounces back here. Because Suarez he's not Zach Wheeler, he's not Aaron Nola, but with him being this heavy of a favorite, I think that Philadelphia bounces back tonight. I think we'll see because they are unreliable, just like the New York Mets. And this number has jumped up too. I don't believe in the line movement backing a team that's desperate or backing a team that's trying to avoid a sweep, and that's the case with the Mets tonight. The Mets are up to 165, 170, depending on where you look. And Tyler McGill is coming off one of the best starts of his young career against the Yankees. He had 10 strikeouts as a short underdog. So he goes from facing the New York Yankees, no disrespect to the Cardinals, but that huge game, to now as a heavy favorite against the Cardinals, who have already won the first 2 games of this series at Citi Field. They won in extra innings last night. Adam Wainwright shut them out 2 nights ago. So the Cardinals, with John Lester, has been really good on the road, too, since coming over to St. Louis. And Lester beat the Mets earlier this season with the Nationals. I don't agree with this line movement at all. I really don't. I would not lay it with the Mets. I just would not. And if they win, so be it. I just would not lay it with them. The Rockies and the Braves in Atlanta, and the Rockies got them last night. So the Rockies, the road warriors, we can call them. They're playing a little better on the road now. They've won 4 or 5 on this road trip at Philadelphia and Atlanta. That's pretty impressive. They've allowed 4 runs or less in 4 of those games. That's a pretty good job by the Rockies. So tonight, it's Antonio Senzatella and Huascar Ynoa on the mound. Senzatella was a huge dog his last time out of Philadelphia and won. The Rockies have won 4 of Senzatella's past 5 starts. He's gone at least 6 innings now in 6 straight starts. The guy's a workhorse, and he doesn't throw a lot of pitches. So someone to really keep an eye on. He faced the Braves at Coors Field earlier this month, 7 innings, 3 earned runs, and a 4-3 victory. So he had the Braves number last time he faced him. For Ynoa, he finally got back in the win column after 3 straight losses against Washington, 5 innings, 7 strikeouts, a 7-6 win. So Ynoa, who started the season well, got hurt. And look, the Braves have bounced back at home off a loss normally, but don't sleep on Colorado. They're still trying on the road because they've been terrible on the road. I don't even know what to say anymore about the San Diego Padres because they've been a complete disaster. And a team that right now is 4 games above 500. That San Diego, forget about, we may miss the playoffs. They may not be a team with a winning record this year. How is that possible? They got Yu Darvish and Blake Snell to be the saviors of the pitching staff. Snell hurt. Yu Darvish has been terrible. So they go to Joe Musgrove tonight. And San Francisco, look, they've won 9 straight. I mean, they clinched a playoff berth 2 nights ago, and they still won 6-1 last night. And I know they're facing Jake Arrieta, the Giants, but they took advantage. Anthony DeSclafani, nearly 7 innings of work. He was great. Giants are not letting up because the Giants do not want to play in that wild card game. They know even if they lose 2 or 3 in a row and the Dodgers catch them, that this season could go up in flames. Now, San Francisco could play in the first round of the playoffs and lose, but at least you lose 3 times. You don't want to have your season end in 1 loss, which is the case if you go to the wild card. Potentially, again, you could win the wild card and advance to the divisional series, but you'd rather not have the off chance that you lose in the 1-game playoff. So San Francisco is not letting up. San Diego, they're down 32 units on the season for a team that's 74-70, which is nuts. And Joe Musgrove goes for the Padres tonight. His last time out against the Dodgers, they lost. I mean, Musgrove's still been pretty good this year. ERA below 3. His record's 10-9. But Musgrove, at least, he gives them an opportunity to win when he goes out there. He's faced San Francisco twice, and he's gotten lit up by them both times. And both times he was a heavy favorite. Now he's basically going to pick them. And the Giants go in another bullpen by committee game. Dominic Leone, who started 2 nights ago, is going to start again tonight. So that's what the Giants do. They keep winning, and they have the same pitcher go 2 and 3 nights. Diamondbacks and the Dodgers, this obviously a very heavy number because the Dodgers are playing the Diamondbacks. Julio Urias, who, again, will not win the Cy Young. He's 17-3. Guy is 17-3 and will not win the Cy Young Award. Probably his teammate will win it, but his teammate not named Walker Buehler. Probably Max Scherzer when it's all said and done. Scherzer's been unbelievable. But Urias, Dodgers 7-0 his last 7 starts. Last time Urias lost a decision was against San Diego back in June. So this guy's been unbelievable. And the Dodgers just totally loaded with their pitching staff, even with Trevor Bauer sidelined right now. I say sidelined. He's got legal problems. But Merrill Kelly goes for Arizona. Diamondbacks on the verge of 20 road wins for the season, 19-55. The Rays and the Blue Jays, last night, Tampa Bay won 2-0. They had 2 solo homers. And Vlad Guerrero struggled at the plate. Really good win for the Rays. Drew Rasmussen, he continues to pitch well for Tampa Bay. Jose Barrios, he wasn't bad. He had 7 innings pitched, but he gave up 1 homer. Bullpen gave up a homer. But also, if you don't score any runs for your pitcher, it's kind of hard to win. So today is the final game of that series, Michael Wacha and Robbie Ray. And Ray is still in the American League Cy Young discussion. Wacha, he's pitched a little better of late. He's given up 4 earned runs his last 3 starts. So that you got to give him 2.35 ERA his last 3 appearances. And for Robbie Ray, he's off of a rough outing against Baltimore's last time out. 3 earned runs, 4 1/3 innings. Did strike out 8 in less than 5 innings of work. But it did snap a 4-start streak of double-digit strikeouts. But for Ray, his last 4 starts at home, all Toronto wins. So Ray's definitely been pretty reliable when he pitches at Rogers Center. Red Sox and Mariners, I'll give you this number. The Red Sox in series of 3 games or more, it's always tough in a 2-game series to have this kind of stat, but the Red Sox are 2-10 their last 12 road series finales, and that's the case today in Seattle. Now, they did beat the Mariners last night, so the teams have split the first 2 games. And Marco Gonzalez starts for the Mariners tonight. Now, the number on Gonzalez this is an afternoon game, by the way, and so was the Blue Jays-Rays game. The Mariners are 7-1 in Gonzalez's last 8 home starts and 6-1 his last 7 as an underdog. So that's good news if you want Seattle today. And Tanner Houck goes for the Red Sox in this finale today. And the Red Sox, just looking back at it, it's a small sample size, but off a win recently, 3 straight losses off a win. Not a big sample size, but still. The Yankees, they blew out the Orioles last night behind Garrett Cole, just because Garrett Cole is elite. And now the Yankees and the Orioles continue their series. And the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays are all going for that last playoff spot in the – 2 of the 3 are going for – they're going to get 2 of those teams probably in. I don't think Oakland gets in. They melted down last night. Seattle may end up short. But the Yankees, Red Sox, and Blue Jays fighting for 2 playoff spots for basically the wild card game, and then one of them will be gone after that one game. A pair of lefties on the mound in that one, Nestor Cortez, John Means going at Camden Yards tonight. So the Yankees have won 3 of 4, kind of bouncing back after they had a terrible stretch, followed by the 13-game winning streak. Now, Baltimore, they're back to their old ways. They've lost 4 straight, and they have given up, in this stretch, 51 runs in 4 games. How do you do this? I don't know. John Means, who actually pitched well his last few starts. Now, the Orioles are, since August, they're 0-7 in Means' last 7 starts. But his last 4 starts have been close losses. The Orioles just can't score runs in those games. He's given up 2 earned runs in each of his last 3 starts. So Means hasn't been bad. For Cortez, he lost his last time out against the Blue Jays. Didn't pitch bad. 6 innings, 2 earned runs, but 2 solo homers kind of did him in. And the Yankees were behind in that game. They just couldn't catch up to the Blue Jays. Cortez did beat the Orioles, or no decision against the Orioles, 4-3 back in early September. But for the most part, he's been a reliable guy for New York. You go from last night laying 330 to 175 today. This, I believe, is a very tough game to handicap, this Indians-Twins game in Minnesota. The team split a doubleheader yesterday. Cleveland won the opener. Minnesota won the nightcap. Cal Quantrill has not pitched well against Minnesota at Target Field. He just beat them at home 4-1. But the Indians are 0-2 in his 2 starts at Target Field this year. And Griffin Jacks, who starts for Minnesota, he's off a no decision in the extra innings loss to the Royals his last time out. Twins are 1-3 his last 4 starts. In that span, he has allowed 23 earned runs in 4 starts. So that's not good. But in his 2 starts at home against Cleveland, Twins are 2-0. And Quantrill favored, well, I mean, it's at 110 apiece. We'll see if it, let's see where, I mean, it's probably going to end up as like a pick 'em. But Quantrill, when he's not a dog, is usually pretty reliable. Cleveland's lost 7 of 10. Minnesota has lost 5 of 7. What is that? 5 of 7. So both teams have not played well, but just a tough game to handicap, in my opinion. So the Rangers knocked around Zach Greinke again, which is not something you see normally. And Texas won last night. Houston won the opener in blowout fashion, 15-1. Texas came back and won last night, 8-1. So these 2 Lone Star rivals, they just keep beating each other up. And Jose Urquidy goes tonight for Houston. 6-3 record, 3.51 ERA. And Urquidy, who was an innings eater for a while, his last few starts, not so long. He hasn't gone past the 5th inning his last few starts. He actually has been a reliable guy on the road of late, even though he missed a few months. Houston's 3-0 his last 3 starts on the road. And you see him as a heavy favorite tonight. And for Texas, Kohei Arihara, he starts for the Rangers. And he's a guy that's not going to go very long. May not pitch past the 5th inning. He's allowed 3 earned runs his last 2 starts. They beat Arizona's last time out as a heavy dog. But Texas, they've won 7 of 9. Again, teams that are playing well down the stretch. And again, Texas 54-90, but teams that care, got to look for that. Considering Houston has kind of wrapped up the AL West, or at least they're in control of it. The Angels and the White Sox, my favorite name now in baseball. Jansen Junk, he pitches for the Angels tonight opposite Dallas Keuchel. White Sox won the opener of this series last night, and Chicago's won 3 of 4 on this homestand. Dallas Keuchel has been terrible, to say the least. I couldn't even think of another word because it's just so bad. His last 4 starts, he's given up 5 runs, earned runs. So he's been pretty terrible in this stretch. And as a favorite, the White Sox are 1-5 his last 6 starts in that role. And the one win was against the Cubs when he gave up 5 runs in the first. They were down 6-0 out of the gate, won that game 17-13. But it had nothing to do with Keuchel. He's the only reason why the Cubs were in the game. For Junk, he was favored his last time out against the Angels, 3 2/3, 5 runs, only 1 was earned, and now he's a heavy underdog tonight in Chicago. How about this one last night, in case you missed it? So Frankie Montes was a huge favorite against the Royals. A's jumped out to, a 6-0 lead in this one? 6-0 in the third. Royals chopped away. They eventually took a 10-7 lead. They won 10-7. They allowed 1 run to Oakland in the final 6 innings. Pretty impressive job by the Royals after Jackson Kowar, who is not a guy I'd recommend backing. But they ended up helping him out. After Kowar left the game, there were 6 relievers for Kansas City that combined to allow 2 runs over the final 8 innings. So that's a good job. Consider Kowar went 1 inning, but gave up the 5 runs before recording an out in the second. And the Royals continue to play well in series openers. I think was it 8-1? Let's see if I wrote this down yesterday. Yeah, 8-1 the last 9 series openers for the Royals. 15-6 the last 21 as a dog. So it's a pair of lefties tonight. Sean Manaea and Mike Minor on the mound. Minor, who actually had a lot of problems with Oakland when he was with Texas, when he faced them this year as a member of the Royals, 6-1 victory, Atkins 3 hits and earned run. You figure it out. But the problem is the Royals are 0-7 in Mike Minor's last 7 starts, even though he did not give up a run his last time out in a 9-8 loss to Baltimore. But Baltimore scored a ton of runs late in that game. So Minor, he's struggled. Sean Manaea has actually pitched well. Well, he's coming off a good start against the White Sox, but that snapped a 4-start winless streak for him. And Manaea, who was once a draft pick of the Royals, he's trying to get it together for the A's right now as Oakland, 3.5 back of the second wild card spot in the American League. They're right behind Seattle. They're behind Boston. Oakland's totally gone in the tank. The final game tonight, the Tigers and the Brewers in Detroit. And the Tigers won in extra innings last night, 1-0. There's a game with a rain delay. But the Tigers, both teams had opportunities late. The Tigers had bases loaded against Josh Hader in the 9th with 1 out, and Hader with a couple big strikeouts to get out of that jam. Brewers had, I believe, the bases loaded with 1 out. Christian Yelich grounded to a double play, and then the Tigers won at the bottom of that inning, so that was pretty big. Now it's another big favorite spot for the Brewers. Actually, I am mistaken. I said tonight. The game's this afternoon at 1:10. It starts in 30 minutes, so not bad. They played 2 games earlier this year in Milwaukee. They played the final 2 here in Detroit. Brandon Woodruff on the mound for Milwaukee. And Woodruff, who was on the losing side against the Phillies last time he was on the mound back on Labor Day, 6 innings, 4 earned runs, allowed 3 homers. So Woodruff, who was a pretty solid under pitcher for a while, he's now 5-1 to the over his last 6 starts. And he faces the Tigers. Woodruff, 1.87 ERA during the day. And Matt Manning, somebody you're not confident in relying on. The Tigers have not won consecutive starts made by Manning this season. They beat the Pirates last time out 5-1. So Manning, a very up and down pitcher. His last start at home, 8 earned runs in less than 4 innings against Oakland. So that's a dicey one if you want to take the Tigers against the Brewers. All right, that's it for today's edition of the Daily Insider. My thanks to Matt Blunt for joining me. And we got plenty more coming up this week on the Insider. Remember, noon Eastern is where you can find it. And also, if you missed any of today's episode, you could find it on VegasInsider.com, also on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider. We also have a best bet video for the Giants and the football team you can find on our YouTube channel as well. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching today's edition of the Daily Insider right here on VegasInsider.com.